Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 7 of Marvel's M.O.D.O.K. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously, we see our boy M.O.D.O.K. is at rock bottom, asking for the Adaptor to fix him something to eat, which is like, wow. I think the Adaptor would appreciate, I'm saying that sarcastically, the fact is that you didn't even notice he's been gone the entire time. That you forgot that you never retrieved him when he was taken by those teenagers. Yet you kind of forgot about it. To be fair, a lot of stuff's happened in between, but also just showing how self-centered he can be. But, goes to get some food, runs into Wonder Man, and I feel so bad for that villain he was picking on. He's like, dude, I ain't bothering nobody. It's like, he's like, yeah, but like, I lost everything in the .com era. He's like, it's been 20 years. Get your life together. I was like, Jesus, that's such a dick superhero thing to do. Side note, I was wondering the entire episode, and obviously it shows at the end, but Wonder Man is voiced by, I kept being like, that sounds like it's Nathan Fillion. It totally is Nathan Fillion. Alan Tudyk voiced somebody in this episode too. I didn't quite catch who it was necessarily, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe it's the guy that pops up at the end arcade. Maybe someone else, but regardless, it's like, obviously, you know, the Firefly / Serenity connection in that regard. But nevertheless, M.O.D.O.K. ends up going to pick up some food, and lo and behold, runs into Jody, who's on a date with Wonder Man, and it's like, oh, crap. And obviously he goes back home and decides to try and kill himself, but Gary tried to talk him out of it, you know. And it's interesting, like, the self-destruct mechanism, like, for both him and his daughter. His is drowning, and hers is, like, trying to suffocate herself with a pillow. But the fact is, it's like, whoa, Jody's still madly in love with me, so I need to use this opportunity to prove myself to her. So he goes to Melissa, and she wants to do a whole makeover situation. And I love that it's like, all right, you're going to have to listen to everything I say, because last time he didn't, but this time he's promising to. And I love the whole thing of like, yes, my teenage daughter is about to get me laid. It's like, oh, that line. Oh, weird. But the fact of the matter is, when it's all said and done, she's like, cool, now that we're done with your makeover, now it's time to work on that toxic masculinity. He's like, gotta go. But he shows up, he's got all like these fillers in and everything, and he's trying to, you know, it's like, don't worry, the spiders aren't going to hurt you. Wait, never mind, they're just do not move. And it's like, at first when we did see Jody, I was like, oh, she looks very Carmen Sandiego. We find out later on why that is. It's because her, her publicist or whatever, Brandy. I love the whole thing of like, she's like, oh, you're not oinking with me. It's like, I don't like being called a pig. She's like, well, calling women bitches is just, was it discriminatory? I forgot the exact word. Demeaning, I think is what she said. And, you know, calling them pigs because pigs are smart and they're good at puzzles. I was like, okay. The interesting justification for that. But other than that, she's like wanting like, which obviously I think is supposed to be like a parody and kind of like a wink and nod to like just how like, first and foremost, like all the stuff you have to do to kind of stay on top. And the fact of the matter is, it's like, just like the stuff that people kind of, it's like, oh, lean into your Latin heritage, talk about like the stuff like your abuela's recipe, getting like your grandma basically having to like cross the border to bring you her recipe. It's like, my grandmother lived in my grandma was born in Colorado, and it's like, you know, and that's where she also grew up. But it's like, oh yeah, like you should like cha-cha instead of walking. It's like, but that's, you know, because obviously trying to lean into like her Latin heritage and stuff like that. And so initially she's kind of against it. She meets Wonder Man and they kind of hit it off a little bit. But then it turns into a thing of like, oh my God, like now it's going public. You should like, I don't want to hear about your filthy sex life, you pig. I just want to see it in the press and stuff like that. And so initially she's reluctant. It turns out, I think Wonder Man is an actor. Well, he's in this, but I think that's his thing. I know nothing about the character. I only know the character by name because, people referenced him when it came to WandaVision. The fact is that, what was it? Like, I think there were thoughts that maybe his brain was going to get implanted in Vision's body because, I think that's what happens in the comic books. I think he's the Vision that's with the West Coast Avengers. I think that's what people were saying. So that's the only thing I know about the character. So, but But obviously, Jody really starts getting into it. She kind of starts losing herself, and then it just becomes about all like the fame and all that, you know. And it's like she loses herself. Like she started off with like, you know, kind of having moral principles, but now it's like, oh no, she's starting to love it. I love the first thing was like, oh, normal person not liking having her photo taken, and then later on it's like, oh, book lady is better at getting her photo taken or something like that. And obviously, like, he enjoys the limelight, too, because he admits it later on that he's shallow. But she starts really loving it, and it's like her book sales are going up. But then it's like, oh, you're dropping down to third. What you need to do is stir up some drama. And so she invites M.O.D.O.K to the wedding. Not the wedding, but, like, the party, just because she knew that M.O.D.O.K would show up and cause some drama. I wondered what she sincere when she was like, oh, my God, M.O.D.O.K actually looks good. What, so on and so forth. But then, obviously, the whole thing of, like, right, M.O.D.O.K, don't start anything. Don't, because it would be terrible if you were to do something. So don't do it, you know. And I love that whole bit back and forth between him and Wonder Man. For one, I love that, like, oh, he's got like a tattoo. Was it called saying something in like Wakandan, which I thought was dope. But also like he was, what was it? It's like, yeah, I know, you know. Thanks for being cool with me dating. You know, I always want to be on good terms with my girlfriend's husband, and it's like, yeah, I know it's a little, you know, I'm either like he was saying, I hope you're okay with the fact is that getting your, you know, it might be a little too soon to get your kids to call me daddy or something like that, and the whole thing of back and forth about like what they're gonna about like, no, I'm not gonna ruin this. It's like, oh, I hate you so much, and it's like, oh, I hate you. And I love like everything M.O.D.O.K saying like, oh, like she's only with you because of the sex. It's like, what? No, she loves me. It's like, no, it's lust. The fact of the matter is, after all those bone tingling orgasms you give her that I never could, she's gonna dump you like grits or something like that. It's like, don't say that. I was, you know, it was interesting because you would have expected M.O.D.O.K would be the one to break first, but it turned out to be Wonder Man, and he proceeded to beat the crap out of him. And I thought that would have snapped Jody out of it, but she's like, oh my God, no, M.O.D.O.K, I know, you provoked him. He's like, but Jody, it's like he's literally laying there. He didn't lay a hand on a dude. I love it was even like, oh, she only likes you for your big penis. And he's like, it's barely above average. But yeah, he's there beaten to a pulp, and it's like, she's like, yeah, you have to leave. But also, like, tag yourself in a photo on Instagram holding the book, you know? So it's like, oh, that sucks. And obviously, while that's all happening, the kids, you know, it's like, oh, like, you know, Melissa's forced to play the piano to the point her fingers are bleeding. And it's like, oh, Lou wants to get on he wants to kind of serenade the party, but it's like, no, I'm waiting for RuPaul to show up to do that. So just stand there and be my perfect kids like I told you that you were in chapter 18. And so they go off, end up, like, they want to kind of get drunk, and there's, like, a ray that basically makes you feel drunk. And I actually thought it was actually kind of a sweet bonding moment a little bit. Yeah, it's like, well, kind of a sad means of, like, because they talk about, like, oh, their parents aren't handling the divorce well. It's like, you guys aren't handling it well either, but I guess in your own crazy way, you're handling it a little bit better than your parents. But, yeah, like, the whole situation I thought was so fascinating, where it's like, they're actually hanging out on the roof, and it's like, yeah, mom and dad are just like, oh, they're handling this so terribly. What was it that Lou said before when he threw the piano in the water? It was like, he's like, yeah, rock and roll is the only way. And he's like, oh no, Billy Joel, what have I done? Or something like that. Feeling like he betrayed Billy Joel by getting rid of the piano. But, they talk about the fact is that their parents are like, they're both, it's like, yeah, I thought dad was bad, but man, mom might even be worse, you know, it's just like how phony she's kind of been lately, and it's like, yeah, but at the very least, it's like, you know, because at first, like, you know, for Lou, he enjoys all this because it's like, right, we actually get to hang out like we never do, like, Melissa's always just kind of like doing her own thing, and, you know, Lou's kind of forced to do the same. It's just, actually, yeah, you are pretty cool, this is pretty dope. She's like, yeah, he's like, yeah, hopefully, no matter what happens, we'll have each other. She's like, yeah. Until I go off to college, and Lou's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of a sad look on his face. You're like, oh, that was, once again, this show actually hit you with moments. You're like, oh, that's actually like dramatic and kind of sad. Like this moment was kind of, you know, but Melissa's like, oh, I'm gonna get these dogs to bang. Whoops, I missed them, but now they're banging anyway. M.O.D.O.K actually went home and actually read Jody's book, and actually, it's like, yeah, your home, it's like a reflection of your soul or something, and his is trash, and there's like rats on the counter banging, and it's like, oh, okay. He's like, well, shit. Jody's at dinner with Wonder Man. Oh my God, look at this. Like, everything's kind of going great. And it's like, But then Wonder Man kind of sees through it a little bit. It's like, oh, I thought, it's like, oh, she's like, yeah, if we're going to do anything, what's next for Wonder Joe? It's like, for her, all she cares about the brand. It's no, like, yeah, initially she wanted to go on a date with him because she liked him, but now it's like, oh, no, that's just all beside the point because she got sucked up into it. Once again, once you, like, get that taste of, like, trying to stay on top and trying to stay relevant to, like, the beast that is popularity and, like, what it can do and shape and turn you into. So it's kind of sad to see that happen to Jodie. But, which Wonder Man was like, no, I legitimately love you. She's like, but what about, you're the one that told me about poison for the camera. He's like, I'm shallow. How dare you throw that back at me? Because finding out like, oh, you were just using me as an excuse. I literally beat up your ex-husband. I will beat up your husband. And it was all for show. Like, that's all this was. Like, this didn't really mean anything to you. So, he ends up kind of leaving her behind because he's saying like, yeah, like I always wondered how you could end up with a supervillain like M.O.D.O.K, but now I realize you're just like him, maybe even worse. And he kind of bounces, And so after M.O.D.O.K makes some changes in his life, it's like one of the chapters is talking about letting go, and he sees the divorce agreement, which I was like, right, so they're not officially divorced. I thought so that they were separated. There was no actual divorce going on, but yet. But yeah, he shows up and tells her like, right, you're right, I've got to kind of change myself first, but I still love you, but right, I got to do what's right. And he hands her the divorce papers, and they end up banging, which I was initially wondering like whether that was the real her or Adaptoid, because we find out later on Brandy was Adaptoid the entire time. I was like, oh, that's interesting. This is all part of College M.O.D.O.K's plan. Once again, he's trying to destroy their lives. Like, was the plan for them to get together? I guess. I think that scene happens before. I'm mixing things up, I'm sure. I think the last scene is them banging, so I don't know if that was part of the plan or not. They're moving into phase 2, but phase 1 was basically, I guess, like, destroy them individually and then kind of like maybe bring them. I don't know. Part of me is like maybe bring them together just to destroy them in the end. I don't know. Maybe not. But also to bring it into Dude Arcade, and I love Adapto being like, why is he laughing? There wasn't nothing funny said, and then it's like, oh, he's expert of death. Why? And he starts laughing. It's like, again, why are you all laughing? Nothing funny was said. So that's where things left us. Some interesting developments. War on multiple fronts type of thing. I've been saying that a lot lately too. Because we still haven't circled back to the whole AIM situation, because like obviously we've been dealing with his more personal life situation. So we'll see whether this is sustainable in the next episode or not. It's like whether this is just like we were caught in throes of passion, and maybe he backpedals a little bit into the M.O.D.O.K he's always been, and where the kids fall into this, like, it's like complicated and confusing it is that, like, oh, mom and dad, you're hooking up. It's like, are you together? I'm sure that's going to be a whole complicated thing. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.